Swiss franc is still like the cleanest shirt or the best shirt in a basket of dirty laundry as far as fiat currency is concerned. Tuesday, December 26, 2023, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Before we start today, just wanted to introduce my mother and her dog. And today we're going to talk about Switzerland and the Swiss franc. Yes, as I said, we're going to talk about Switzerland and the Swiss franc. There are many who consider the Swiss franc a safe haven. I do too, but in a different way than I usually look at safe havens. I would say it's a safe haven for the fiat currencies. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about Switzerland and why I'm here and what I think about Switzerland. So, the first time my parents came to Switzerland was in 1971. My dad had his own business. He used to love sailing. That was one of his hobbies. And he signed up for, I think it was the Swiss Championships of a class of sailing boats that he raced. And it was in Lake Thun, which is, or Thunersee, which is in the middle of Switzerland. And he met a few people there. And they said, oh, I have a friend who's building a hotel and he's a real estate developer. They're going to build some condos there. And then 2 or 3 years later, we went to that place, and this is where it is, in the Sonnenland, or Bernese Oberland. And so that was 1974. My dad met this guy who was a friend of his who used to sail. He bought like an apartment, and we've been coming here ever since. Of course, in the 80s, my parents moved to Switzerland for business. My dad moved to Geneva. We still had the place here. My sister got married here in the 80s. So it's almost like a second home for me. I lived in Switzerland till 1992. I started out in a small private bank in Geneva. I worked there for 3 years, and then I went to London. So that's why I'm here in Switzerland. And as you can see, we've got snow up in the mountains. You can ski. There's not much snow. Usually, I would say in January we'll have quite a lot of snow. You can have snow during Christmas here, but this year not that much. They had a lot of snow in November, and then it all melted. There were some rains. But anyway, what about Switzerland in general? Because I lived here for 5 years, and I've been coming here since I was about 9. So I would say, yeah, Switzerland is a very diverse country in that 10 minutes away from here, they speak French. The most spoken language is Swiss German. About 2/3 of the people speak that language. And then 20% or maybe a little more speak French. And there is maybe 5-8% speak Italian. I'm not sure exactly. The southern part of Switzerland is the Italian-speaking part. And you also have a language called Romanche, which is where they speak that near the border of Austria and East Switzerland. Very small. I think only 30,000 people speak that language. But if you look at the Swiss banknote, it's written in 4 languages. And Switzerland, of course, is a small country. When I lived here in the late 80s, early 90s, I played a lot of golf. I used to travel all around Switzerland to play amateur tournaments. And I would say you hardly ever drive more than 3 or 4 hours, even from Geneva if you want to go to Zurich. So it's a small country. It's got a lot of mountains, of course. And over here, the main industry is tourism, but there's loads of good cheese as well and farming. What else about Switzerland? Yes, there are big cities in the plains: Geneva, Zurich, Bern, the capital, of course. And yeah, I think the population 30 years ago was 6 million. Now it's approaching 8 or 9. It could be a little more. So it's a small country, not a big population. And so that's Switzerland. The other thing I would say, Switzerland has a reputation of being a very good place to live, and it is very clean, high, how can I say, income per capita, very high. But it's not socialist. I was speaking to my sister who's been, married a Swiss. She's been basically here, living since the late 80s. And she said things are run, there's hardly any public companies. It's all run private. But what she says is the average worker is looked after in terms of getting a good deal, and that's why you get a lot of seasonal workers or from all over Europe and the world coming to work here. But it's very strict, the immigration. But once you're in, you earn well, and you can, any job, you'll be able to rent a place, you'll be able to live. So that's economically, politically, Switzerland is very decentralized. So I'm in the canton of Bern, which is the equivalent of a state in the U.S. I think there's 26 cantons. I could be wrong. And in each canton, there are what they call communes, or Gemeinde in German. They're not communists. It's just called a commune. And they're like counties within the cantons, and they have a lot of power. Just an example, my sister said, in this region here, they decided to put some policy through to have solar panels put up in the mountains to harness energy, and they had a local referendum. There are local referendums, not just national. And she said 79% of the people said no, they didn't want it. So that's the way things work here. Bern can't decide for this local community what they're going to do, unless the local community says yes. The other thing, I think in April they decided to have a referendum on whether they want to go cashless. They haven't held it yet. My sister, though, told me anyone above 50 here, especially above 70, they only deal in cash. And she said hell will have to freeze over until the Swiss vote for a cashless society. So that's Switzerland in a nutshell. So now let's go to the Swiss franc. And yes, it has a reputation of being a hard currency or a safe haven. And I would say, if you don't want to have all your cash in gold or silver, I would say the Swiss franc is probably the best currency to have, fiat currency to have. Would I have a lot of Swiss francs? No. I'm still sticking to gold and silver, and I'll tell you why. But first, let's see why the Swiss franc has this reputation. And yeah, it's only been in the last 50 years or so. Well, and this is what Wikipedia says, and I'm going to put this link below in the description, and you can read a bit more about the Swiss franc. It says the Swiss franc has historically been considered a safe haven currency with a legal requirement that a minimum of 40% be backed by gold reserves. However, this link to gold, which dated from the 1920s, was terminated on May 1st, 2000, following a referendum, making the franc fiat money or fiat currency. By March 2005, following a gold selling program, the Swiss National Bank held 1,290 tons of gold in reserves, which equated to 20% of its assets. Why do I think this referendum took place? I haven't looked really at the history of that, why it came up, but I would say that was the period when the central banks were selling a lot of gold, when Gordon Brown sold the UK gold, when Robert Rubin and Larry Summers were manipulating gold with the gold leases. And I think the Americans probably, or the big central banks told the Swiss, look, you're going to have to, stop this policy of gold backing. And I can bet that they did a huge campaign on how better it would be for Switzerland to go off a gold standard. And I think that's why that referendum went through. You might know a bit more about it. Comment in the comment section. It says here as well, in November 2014, the referendum on the Swiss Gold Initiative, which proposed the restoration of a 20% gold backing for the Swiss franc, was voted down, unfortunately. So despite all of that, since 2000, the Swiss franc is still a strong currency compared to all the other fiat currencies. Of course, against gold, it isn't. So we're going to go through some charts here. And here I've got the dollar versus the Swiss franc since August 15th, 1971, which was when Nixon closed the gold window. And you can see that $1 fetched more than 4 francs. And now a dollar fetches how much? Let's see, 85 Swiss centimes, or 86. I remember when I was living here in the early 90s, I think a dollar was 160. So the dollar's lost 79% of its value against the Swiss franc since 1971. And that's why out of all the fiat currencies, the Swiss franc really, not the dollar, the Swiss franc is king. So I've got another chart here, and this is the Swiss franc versus gold since August 15th, 1971. And I've got how many grams of gold you can buy with 1 Swiss franc. And you can see that the Swiss franc has lost 90% of its value versus gold. So it hasn't done well versus gold, and that's why I said, personally, I wouldn't hold Swiss francs. But for someone who, let's say, is very wealthy and has sold a business and has a lot of cash, for example, they might want to buy a bit of gold, physical gold, but they might need to keep some of that cash in dollars or euros. I would keep it in Swiss francs. And that's what I would do. So just wanted to show you the dollar versus gold, the gram of gold since 1971. Well, that's lost 98%. So even though the Swiss franc has lost 90%, the dollar's lost 98%. And I've got a chart as well of the Swiss franc versus gold since the 1st of May 2000, which was when they severed the link to gold, and the Swiss franc has lost 73%. So yeah, most of the losses that the Swiss franc has had since 1971 against gold has been since the year 2000. So let's have a look how the dollar has done since May 1st, 2000. Well, it's lost 87%. So despite the fact that the Swiss voted to scrap the gold standard, 40% backing for their currency, the Swiss franc is still like the cleanest shirt or the best shirt in a basket of dirty laundry as far as fiat currency is concerned. What has been the impact, in my opinion? I haven't lived here for 30 years, but I can notice that there's a lot of more credit. The real estate market is really mushroomed. Prices have gone through the roof. Prior to 2000, I think things were a lot more stable in terms of property prices, and people didn't borrow as much. That's the feeling I get. And I think the people who have benefited the most are the wealthy, of course. That's what happens, because this is what inflation is about. So yeah, that is Switzerland. And now with that, let's quickly look at where the markets are this morning. In the UK and most of Europe, I think it's a holiday, but not in the US. In the UK, it's Boxing Day. Right now, it's like midday Swiss time, which is 11 a.m. London. So the futures market is trading, and we can go through some of the prices. Spot gold, for example, is up $10 at 2,063. The high's been 65 and the low 52. In terms of the year-to-date performance right now, I think we're almost up 14% in dollar terms, gold. Of course, we've got till the end of the week. It could be lower or higher, who knows. Of course, 2070, 2075 will be a key level here. And after that, it will be that high we had a few weeks ago at 2148 or thereabouts. It could be an interesting end to the year. I checked in pounds, for example. Price of gold is up about 8% a year. Why has the pound outperformed the dollar? Well, because it underperformed massively last year, because we had that Liz Truss Kwarteng crisis in September, October time. But don't be fooled. I saw a headline the other day in the Telegraph. The pound is the best performing currency in 2023. Yeah, against the other crappy fiat currencies, but not against gold. So silver's at 24.32. It's up 14 cents. The high's been 41, the low 14. I think if we can finish above 25, 26 this week or the year, that would be very positive. We're still below. We broke out below this triangle recently. We came back down. We're still very near now the top of that triangle. What about the index futures, stock market index futures? Well, the Dow's up 95, NASDAQ is up 50, S&P is up 16. The currencies are pretty much unchanged, so I won't go through them. Let's quickly look at the commodities. Well, WTI crude is at $74, or actually $73.50. It's unchanged. Brent is at $78.80, down about an eighth. Platinum is down $3, trading around 990, and high-grade copper is up 0.25% at 391. So I'm going to end it here, and yes, we're going home in a couple of days. And yeah, I'll be back to normal. We'll have Rudy back as well. My mom's dog is called Jujuba, which in Portuguese means jelly bean. So I wanted to have him with me, but he's a little bit shy. So I told my mom, "Do you want to be in the video?" And she said, "Fine." Yeah, she wanted to be in the video, and she held a Jujuba. So there you go. With that, I'm going to wish you all, well, a happy new year and a prosperous new year as well. Make sure I'm going to try to keep stacking. I mean, that's up to you, but stacking gold and silver. So take care. Goodbye.